Every year, approximately 7% of homeowners sell their home without using a real estate agent. And based on the current U.S. median home value of $393,500, that's a savings of nearly $20,000. Going solo and selling your home on your own is not an easy feat, but if you have the right information, you have the right steps, it could be something that might save you a ton of money. Now, as a veteran of the real estate industry for over 25 years, I will tell you up front what this video is not going to be about. It's not going to be about all the things that could go wrong and why you have to hire a real estate agent. What I am going to teach you is what is absolutely necessary for you to successfully sell your home on your own. From pricing the home, marketing, preparing the house for sale, and dealing with home buyers and negotiation and ultimately closing the deal. I want to share with you a peek behind the curtain so you'll feel more empowered to take control of the home sale process. So whether you decide to sell it on your own or you do decide to hire a real estate agent, you'll know all the parts of the process and you'll be much more equipped to sell your house. Now, the first step, and without a doubt, the most important step in the process, is setting the right price. Now, this step is crucial. It could be the difference between having a house sell right away above listing price versus having a house sit on the market and ultimately selling way below what you anticipated you'd get for the house. Regardless of all the other steps, the marketing, the pictures, the staging, no matter how much money you've put in renovations, if you don't get this step right, the rest of it doesn't matter. Now, the first thing to absolutely wrap your mind around is that the seller does not set the value. The seller sets the price, the list price, but ultimately the buyer is the one that sets the value. Now, you may put a list price out there, but unless you have a buyer that's willing to pay that price is meaningless. It's not until we actually have a paying buyer that's willing to put money up that determines what that value is. And the key to setting the right price is to try to determine what that value is and then set accordingly the right list price. So in order to find out what a buyer would pay for your house, we need to look at the data. And specifically, we're looking at what has sold in the last 6 months. Now, I would recommend that you check out Zillow for this. There are a lot of different websites out there that will offer this type of information, but we're going to jump on Zillow. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So when you're researching to figure out what your home value is, you want to focus on the properties that have sold. You don't want to pay attention to the homes that are pending or active on the market because they're not a direct representation of what a buyer is willing to pay in your area. So you focus only on the properties that have sold and then look at the local data within your area. So if you're on Zillow, you can go up to the Buy tab and we're going to look at recent home sales. And then we will focus in, this is an area in Plymouth, in my area, and I'm just going to pick this, this particular neighborhood as an example. And what you want to do is you want to go through each one of these properties and look at the information on those properties and compare it to your home. So if we pull this property up and we look at it was sold for $560,000. We look at the sold date. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to tell you is when you're looking at that sold date, the thing that you want to pay attention to is how long it was on the market. So if you scroll down, you can actually see that it was on the market for several months. It was listed in January 3rd, sold for, it took almost 2 months to get an offer, sold for under asking price. The reason it sold for under asking was because the price wasn't properly set at the beginning. If they had set the proper pricing at the very beginning of the process, they probably wouldn't have been on the market for 2 months and they probably wouldn't have sold for under asking. So you want to take that into consideration when you're trying to figure out how it compares to yours. The other thing you want to do is you want to just look at all the details of the home and as it compares to yours. The description oftentimes will give you a good indication, but you're going to look at all the big things first. You're going to look at, the size of the home, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the square footage, the yard, and you're going to side-by-side comparison to that, in how it stacks up to yours. I would say in the description to give you an idea of, if the property's been updated, if those renovations are similar to your renovations, that'll give you a clue. But all of this information is extremely helpful, and you want to take that information and put it into a spreadsheet so you can compare it side by side with yours, and you try to figure out where does your home fit compared to that property. So now you've collected all this data, you have a general idea of what the house is worth, and it's time to determine what the list price is going to be. Now, there's a couple things that you want to keep in mind when you're setting your list price. The first is the danger of overpricing. You don't want to fall into that trap of thinking that, oh, we'll just price it a little bit higher because the buyers will make an offer and we'll negotiate. And yes, that can be true, but sometimes it can backfire. And what I mean by that is that if your price is just a little too high, you'll actually have buyers that won't come take a look at the house. And the whole idea is to get as many people in the house as possible to generate as much interest as possible. When you generate more interest, you have a higher probability of getting multiple offers. And if you have a price that's just outside of where that market value price is, you will lose some buyers, which ultimately could hurt you in the long run because you'll have fewer offers. The other thing you want to look at is what the local market conditions are doing. Market conditions will vary from state to state, from town to town even. And depending on where you are, that will determine what you list the property for. Up here in Massachusetts, the market is still moving very quickly. Inventory is still very low. Buyer demand is still very high. When properties come on the market, if they're priced right, they will sell very, very quickly. That will be starkly different if you're down in, say, Texas or in Florida. So you want to have a good idea, an understanding on what's happening in your local area. You want to really pay attention to how long those properties were sitting on the market when you're looking at your sold comparable properties, because that'll kind of give you an idea of how you should price the house. If homes are taking a little bit longer to sell, then you may want to be a little bit more aggressive. You may even want to go, instead of at market value, go slightly below market value to increase that amount of traffic. And the last thing I'll mention on determining the price is don't rely on those online recommendations from Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com. Those values are based on an algorithm, and they don't take into consideration renovations, updates, anything that you've done to the house that might be different than what, say, is recorded down at the town assessor's office. So you've set the price, now it's time to prepare the house for sale. The goal here is to help the buyers envision themselves living in your house. Now, the first step is going to be decluttering and depersonalizing. Now, I have gone in detail on this on another video. You can check that out here. Essentially, your goal is to transform your property from a home that you live in to a house on the market. So you want to try to get this house decluttered. You want to try to put away all the things. You want to pack away as much as possible before the house goes on the market. You want to depersonalize so that when a buyer walks into that house, they're not distracted by all the things that you have. You can absolutely leave some of your personal items to accentuate the home, to allow it to be staged, but you don't want it to be so distracting that the buyers miss all the great elements of your home because they're looking at all your personal items. Now, after you've decluttered and you've depersonalized, now it's time for deep cleaning. Now, this is not going to be the fun part of the process, but it is so important. You're going to want to clean the windows, the curtains. You're going to want to clean the walls, the trim, kitchen countertops, cabinet fronts, floors, carpets. Try to clean everything. The more that you can clean, the better it'll show. It'll show in person, it'll show in pictures. So this is a super, super crucial step that you absolutely don't want to skip. And as you're going through that process, you might discover you need some repairs, some minor repairs. Maybe some trim that has been damaged from an animal, or you have some window trim rot that needs to be taken care of. One thing that you may want to consider having is a pre-listing home inspection. Now, a lot of buyers do a home inspection as part of their process of buying the house. And oftentimes I've seen home sellers get a pre-listing inspection to kind of prepare themselves so there's no surprises. And these pre-listing inspections are very much just a home inspection, but it'll give you a list of everything that needs to be fixed. Now, you don't have to fix it all, but at least you'll know what the hot points are. And it might uncover something that you didn't realize that you needed. In fact, one of my recent home inspections, the inspector took the front of the electrical panel off, only to discover that the inside of the panel was rusted and it was really a fire hazard. We negotiated with the buyers, the sellers gave the buyers a credit, but it wasn't something that the sellers were expecting. Now, you may find that and decide that you don't want to fix it, but at least you'll be aware of it when it comes up during the inspection. Now, once the repairs and maintenance are done, now it's time to stage. And you're going to want to spend some time staging, really looking at how things are laid out in the house, colors of the walls. Is there anything that can really accentuate the rooms in the home and make them look more appealing in camera, make them look more appealing in person? Now, I did a video about this and you want to check that out here. But essentially, you want to walk through the house as if you're the buyer. I would also refer back to the properties that you used when you were determining what the price is. Look at what those sold properties looked like, because that will give you an idea of what the buyer's expectations in your market are looking for. Now, once the house is staged, now you're ready for professional photography. Now, I don't want you to skip this step and use your iPhone. Yes, the pictures are unbelievable. However, a professional photographer will know how to stage a shot. They'll know where to place the camera in the room to give it the best viewpoint so it looks the best online. These are all things that buyers look for when they're house hunting. And the more information that you can put online for a buyer, the better chances you'll get of getting them in the house. Now, the next step is going to be marketing. No matter how great your home looks, it won't sell if no one sees it. The first step is going to be listing it online with as many of the online companies as you can. The Zillows, the Redfins, the Realtor.coms, any company that will allow you to log in and put your information into the system and advertising it for sale, you want to enter it on those websites. And then you want to put it on social media. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. The goal is to get in front of as many people as possible to try to find as many buyers as possible that might be interested in seeing your home. Now, when you're getting ready to submit your listing online, you want to write a compelling description. And that compelling description should be a combination of fact and emotion. You want to include renovations, repairs, make sure you include dates. They don't have to be to the date, but you want to have as much information as you possibly can for the buyer, but you also want to paint a picture. You want to remember, why did you buy that property originally, and then tell that story in that description. Now, another thing you might want to consider are open houses. Now, I'm going to caution you on open houses. You want to make sure that if you do them properly. Open houses can be a great way to find a buyer. It can also be dangerous if you don't follow a few simple steps. And you have to remember that unlike a showing where a buyer will call you directly and schedule, and you'll have an opportunity to get a name, a telephone number, an address, an email, and you can research them a little bit before they get to the house, an open house, anybody can walk in the front door. So if you are going to do open houses, make sure, please make sure you're not doing them alone. As a matter of fact, I would recommend having several people at the open house with you so that you can accompany the buyers throughout the house. Because the last thing you want are strangers walking through your house unaccompanied. Now, while you're doing your research, you may decide to hire a real estate agent. And it's super important to hire an agent that has experience, that's not new to the industry, that has years in the business, that can give you the right guidance that you need for selling your home. Now, over my career, I have built relationships with thousands of agents across the country. If you need to be connected with someone in your local area, click the link down in the description. I'll reach out to you, get your information, have a quick conversation, and then connect you with the right agent that will take great care of you. Now the house is on the market. Now you're getting calls and showing requests from buyers. The first thing to be prepared for is to be ready for calls, be available, be ready to respond quickly. There's nothing more frustrating when a buyer has the emotions peaked, they see your house, they're super interested, all of that compelling description is doing what it's supposed to do. They call you or they email you, and then you don't get back to them for 24, 48 hours. They will cool off and they will go elsewhere. And that is exactly what you'd want to avoid. So responding quickly as possible, within an hour, 2 hours, as quickly as possible, get back to them, even on a text, even an email, to let them know that you received the message. And then when you do get back to them, there are 3 qualifying questions that you want to ask every single buyer. Number 1, are you pre-approved? Are you paying cash? And as a side note, you absolutely can ask them to send you a copy of that pre-approval. I would recommend that you do. Number 2, what is your timeline? Are they looking because they're just starting the process? Or are they looking to buy quickly because maybe they have a house that they've sold and it's under contract? Or maybe they're relocating and they need to find something rather quickly. You want to know what their timeline is ahead of time so that you can see if they're a serious buyer or not. And number 3, do you have a home to sell? If they have a home to sell and they haven't even started the process, you know what it takes at this point to get your home ready to get on the market. If they haven't even started, they're not a serious buyer. And you may decide that you don't want to set up that appointment with that buyer because they're not ready, willing, and able to buy the house. And then after you've asked those questions and you're ready to schedule an appointment, Be flexible on your showing schedule. This is probably going to be the hardest part. If you're working from home, maybe a little bit easier. If you're not working from home, it's going to be more challenging. But the time that people typically want to see a house is going to be nights and weekends. And that means cutting into personal time, yes, but you want to be able to cater to when the buyers are available. Again, it's about getting as many buyers into the house as possible. And if we restrict that schedule, we're not going to achieve that goal. Now, the next step is going to be safety. And I mentioned this with the open houses. The same goes for showings. You never want to show the house alone. Preferably have a neighbor come over, family friend, family member. You don't want to be in the house alone when a buyer comes to the front door. I do recommend that you Google every single buyer that calls to schedule an appointment. That will help to kind of give you some legitimacy to whether the name matches the telephone number or the email address, but that sometimes doesn't always work. If they give you a cell phone number or an email address that may not come up online, and you really may not know who the heck is coming to your front door. So please, please, please don't show the house by yourself. Now, we've talked about showings. Now we need to talk about buyer's agents. Now, there are a lot of buyers that have contractual obligations with buyer's agents. And if they cannot afford to pay that buyer agent fee out of pocket, they're only going to look at properties where the seller is offering a compensation to the buyer to help pay for that buyer agent fee. Now, you don't have to do that. You most certainly don't have to offer a concession to the buyer to help pay for that, but that might be something to consider because it will open up the field of buyers. Now, the last section is getting to the closing table. Now, you've gone through the showings and you finally have an offer or maybe multiple offers. And there are a few things that you want to remember when you're reviewing these offers. Remember, it's not just about the price, it's the sum of the parts. Or you may get an offer that has a fantastic price, but the terms are not that great. These offers are not considered all equal, and it's important that you find the right balance that fits your particular needs. Now, I want to go over a couple things that you want to look at when you're looking at these offers. The first thing you want to look at is the time frame. How flexible are the buyers? Does it fit your time frame? The second thing is financing. What is the date of the pre-approval? How much is the pre-approval? Has it been underwriting reviewed? Has the credit been checked? All of these things are important. If the pre-approval amount is higher than the offer amount, that's actually a good thing. That means that they're approved for more than they're actually looking to spend, which makes them a stronger buyer. I would have a conversation with the lender. You can call the lender. That's what I would do as a listing agent. But you as a homeowner, you can call the lender and say, listen, this person is making an offer on my house. What can you tell me? Now, they're not going to be able to give you personal financial information, but they might be able to fill in the blanks in terms of, giving you a better idea of how strong a buyer they are. Now, if they're paying cash, you want either a letter from their financial institution with the current date on it or a statement from their bank. The next thing you want to look at are contingencies. Do they have a house to sell? Are they asking for inspections? Are they including an escalation clause? All of these things have bearing on the entire weight of the offer. And then finally, you want to determine what your bottom line is. You want to look at what your walkaway number is after all your expenses. You want to look at every little seller concession that the buyer is asking for to make sure that that bottom line fits into what your goal is. Now, from the time you receive the offer till the time you sit at the closing table, you're negotiating. And there's a couple points I want to touch on in regards to negotiation. First, stay pragmatic. Even though this is your home, it's still a business transaction, and you want to stay as pragmatic as possible from the beginning to the end of the transaction. Next, research what the customary buyer requests are for your area. Find out what is typically asked from a buyer to a seller in the offer stage, in the inspection stage, and so that when you receive those items, it doesn't send you sideways because you're expecting it because that's what's customary for the area. And then lastly, you'll want to hire an attorney. An attorney will review all of your paperwork throughout the transaction, but they'll also give you advice on what disclosures that you absolutely have to give the buyers so that you can make sure that you are protected legally throughout the process. And regardless of how you end up selling your house, as you go through this process, one of the most important things that you'll want to make sure you do is to protect yourself legally. And there are several mistakes that you can make that might end up getting you sued. To avoid those mistakes, you're going to want to check out this video. I'm Jen Sylvester, and I'm here to help you become a savvy home seller.